I gave her 10 years of my life. I showed up for every school play, every broken car, every late-night panic attack about money. And when her daughter stood at the altar in a dress I helped pay for, she looked past me like I was furniture. That's where this story starts, not with the wedding, with the 10 years before it. My name is not important right now. What matters is that I was 53 years old when I finally understood that loving someone's family doesn't mean they'll ever love you back. I met my wife, I'll call her Beverly, at a church potluck of all places. This was back when I still thought God had a sense of humor about timing. I was 51, recently retired from 22 years as an electrician with the county. My knees were shot, my savings were modest but solid. My ex-wife had left 9 years before that, and I had made a kind of peace with the quiet of my house the way you make peace with a bad back. You just learn to move around it. Beverly walked in carrying a casserole dish and wearing a yellow blouse, and something in me that had been switched off for a long time clicked back on. She was warm. She laughed easily. She had a way of listening to you like you were the only person in the room. She also had a 26-year-old daughter named, I'll call her Kayla, who lived 40 minutes away and called her mother 3 times a day. And she had a son-in-law, I'll call Trent, who Kayla had been with for 3 years by then, who had a handshake like a wet paper towel and eyes that were always doing math. I didn't think much about either of them at first. Beverly and I dated for 7 months before I asked her to marry me. She said yes before I finished the sentence. We got married on a Saturday in October. Small ceremony, backyard of a friend's house. Kayla was the maid of honor. She smiled the whole day. I thought that meant something. The first year was good. Beverly and I had what I can only describe as the quiet, deliberate happiness of 2 people who had both been through enough to know not to take it for granted. We cooked together on Sunday mornings. We drove to the coast twice. We went to bed at a reasonable hour and slept like people who had earned it. Kayla visited often. She was polite to me in the way that a hotel concierge is polite, efficient, surface level, and fundamentally transactional. I told myself she just needed time. I had heard that before from friends who had done this kind of thing. Give it time, they come around. What I didn't know yet was that Trent had been talking. Not to me, never to me, to Kayla. Quietly, steadily. The way water gets under a foundation, you don't notice it until the walls start to crack. I found out later what he had been saying. Little things? Things like, your mom moved fast, don't you think? You sure this guy isn't after the house? He retired early. That's a little convenient. He never said anything big enough to be confronted. Just small drops of suspicion placed carefully over time into the soft ground of a daughter who had watched her mother cry for years after her father left, and who had decided somewhere deep down that protecting her mother was the most important thing she would ever do. I understand it now. I didn't then. What I understood then was that something was shifting and I couldn't name it. Beverly started getting quieter after Kayla's visits. Not cold, Beverly was never cold, but careful, like she was holding something in. I'd ask her what was wrong and she'd say nothing, she was just tired. I believed her because I wanted to. Trent got laid off in the spring of our 2nd year. I didn't make a big deal of it. I just said what seemed obvious. If they needed help, we were family and family helped. Beverly cried a little when I said that. I thought she was moved. I think now she was guilty. Over the next 8 months, I helped cover 3 months of their rent. Not a loan. I didn't say loan. I said help. I paid off the balance on a credit card that was hemorrhaging interest. When their car blew a head gasket, I spent a weekend in Trent's driveway doing the repair myself because the shop wanted $2,200 and I knew I could do it for $400 in parts. Trent stood in the garage doorway and watched me the entire time. He handed me tools when I asked. He didn't say thank you when I finished. Beverly said he's just proud. You know how men are. I knew how men were. I had been one for 53 years. What I knew was that pride was one thing, and contempt was another, and the difference was in the eyes. The following year, Kayla got pregnant. Beverly was overjoyed in a way I hadn't seen since our wedding day. I was happy for her. Genuinely. I had no stake in being anything other than glad that the people I loved were glad. When the baby came, a girl, I drove 2 hours to the hospital. I sat in the waiting room for 4 hours. When they let the family back, Trent's mother was in the room, his father, his sister, 3 of his cousins, Beverly, and me standing in the hallway waiting to be invited in. Beverly came out and said, Kayla's tired, maybe give it a few minutes. The few minutes turned into 45. I went home. I told myself it was fine. New parents, crowded room. I'd meet the baby next week. I met her the following Sunday. She was 8 days old and she had Kayla's nose. I held her for about 4 minutes before Trent said, she needs to eat, and Kayla took her back. Beverly watched all of this from across the room. She didn't say anything. And that was the moment. Not the wedding, not later, but that Sunday afternoon in Kayla's living room that I understood something was being decided without me. A line was being drawn. I was being placed on one side of it. and my wife was letting it happen. I didn't say anything that day, or the next week, or the week after that. What I did instead was keep showing up, because I had decided when I married Beverly that I was going to be the kind of man who didn't run when things got complicated. I had run once, or been run off, in my first marriage, and I had spent 9 years in a quiet house wondering if I could have done something different. I wasn't going to wonder that again, so I kept coming. I kept fixing things. I kept writing the occasional check when they were short. I helped them move to a bigger apartment when the baby needed her own room. I built the crib. Trent watched me build the crib and then went to watch football. Beverly said, "He's just not good with his hands." I said, "Yeah." The baby grew. She started walking. She started talking. She called Beverly Grandma before she was 2, which made Beverly cry every time. She called me nothing because no one had taught her what to call me. I was just the man who came with Grandma. I told myself that was fine too, that it would sort itself out. 3 years into the marriage, something shifted in Beverly that I can only describe as a retreat. She pulled back from me in a way that was so gradual, I almost didn't notice it. She started taking Kayla's calls in the bedroom instead of the kitchen. She started agreeing with things I said and then doing the opposite a week later. Small things, but small things accumulate. I asked her once directly if Trent had said something about me. She got very still and said, "Why would you ask that?" And I said, "Because I feel like I'm being managed." And she said, "You're being paranoid?" Maybe I was. I thought about that for a long time. What I know is that about 4 months after that conversation, Kayla called Beverly and told her they were planning a big family trip to celebrate the baby's 3rd birthday, a long weekend at a cabin up in the mountains. She named everyone who was invited Trent's family. Beverly, my name was not mentioned. Beverly told me about it that night at the kitchen table over dinner. She said it like she was reading a weather report. She said Kayla thought it might be easier if it was just the immediate family this time. I put my fork down. I said, "Beverly, I am your husband. Who is immediate family if not me?" She didn't answer right away. She looked down at her plate and then she said, "You know how Trent is." And there it was. 7 words that told me everything. She went on the trip. She was gone for 4 days. She texted me photos of the baby at the lake. I texted back things like "so cute" and "looks beautiful," and I sat in my house, the house we shared, and I felt the particular loneliness of being erased by someone who is still present. When she came back, I didn't argue. I didn't fight. I made dinner and I asked how the drive was, and I watched her for any sign that she understood what she had done. I didn't see one. The months after that were a kind of slow motion. I was present and I was not present. I went through the motions with a precision that probably looked like contentment from the outside. Inside, I was deciding something. Not dramatically, not with anger. Just the quiet, grinding arithmetic of a man who is finally counting what things actually cost. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday in April. Kayla and Trent were getting married. They had been together for 6 years by then, had a 3-year-old daughter together, and had apparently decided it was time to make it official. The invitation was addressed to Beverly. The envelope had one name on it. Beverly showed it to me that evening, and I watched her face as she did it, and what I saw there was not apology and not accident. It was calculation. She had known what that envelope said. She had seen it first. She had decided how to hold it and when to bring it out and what expression to wear when she did. I looked at the invitation. I looked at my wife. I said, "Is my name on there?" She said, "It's addressed to the family." I said, "Beverly, that is not what I asked." She said, "Trent thought it would be better if I stood up from the table." I walked to the bedroom and I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. Long enough for the light in the room to change. Long enough for Beverly to come to the doorway and stand there and not say anything. Then I got up. I went to the small desk in the corner where I kept files and paperwork. I opened the bottom drawer. I took out an envelope that I had prepared 3 weeks earlier when I had started to understand how this story was going to end. It was a thick envelope. It held a letter and several documents. I put it on the kitchen table. I told Beverly it was for her to read when she was ready. I said I was going to give her that space. I picked up the bag I had already packed and left. Beverly called me 6 times that evening. I didn't answer. I drove to a motel 40 minutes away and lay on a bed that smelled like industrial detergent, and I stared at the ceiling for most of the night. The letter explained some things. It explained that over the course of 4 years and 7 months I had contributed. I had kept records. Because I am the son of an accountant, and I have always kept records, approximately $63,000 in direct financial support to Kayla and Trent. This included rent payments, the credit card payoff, car repairs, moving expenses, baby furniture, medical copays, and various other things. It was not a demand for repayment. I was very clear about that. It was documentation. It was a record that said I was here, I contributed, I showed up. That is what happened. Whatever anyone says happened. The letter also said that I had filed for legal separation and that Beverly should contact an attorney. And then it said one more thing. The last thing. I want to be precise about how I wrote this, because I thought about it for a long time before I put it on paper. I wrote, I don't need you to tell Kayla any of this, but I want you to know that I never once acted the way I acted because I expected something in return. I did it because it was right, and I am leaving because staying would no longer be right. I hope you understand the difference. Beverly left 3 voicemails that night. In the first one, she was crying. In the second one, she was angry. In the third one, very late, her voice was quiet and she said, I think I knew. I think I knew for a long time what was happening, and I told myself it was fine because it was easier. I'm sorry. I didn't call back that night. The separation became a divorce 8 months later. It was not contentious. We divided what was fair to divide. Beverly kept the house. I didn't fight her on it. What I did not expect, what I genuinely did not see coming, was Kayla. About 6 weeks after I left, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It said, This is Kayla. I read the letter. Can we meet? I thought about it for 3 days. I told myself I didn't owe her anything. I told myself I was done with that chapter. I told myself a lot of things. Then I thought about the baby. About a little girl who was going to grow up inside a family that operated the way this one had operated. And I thought about what she was going to learn from that. About what men were and what they were worth and what happened when you needed one and didn't know how to let one in. I texted back, coffee on Saturday. You picked the place. She was already there when I arrived. She looked tired. She looked like her mother, which was not her fault. She said before I even sat down, he told me things about you that I believed. I don't know when I stopped checking whether they were true. I sat down. I ordered coffee. I said, I know. She said, I don't know how you stayed as long as you did. I said, I made a promise. I take those seriously. She started to cry, quiet and controlled, the way people cry when they've already done the ugly part alone. She said, My daughter asks about you. She still calls you the man with the big hands. She laughed a little when she said that, through the tears. I thought about the crib. We talked for 2 hours. I didn't absolve her completely. I'm not built that way. But I didn't hold her at arm's length either. She was 32 years old. She had believed what the man in her house had told her to believe. That is not innocence, but it is also not a crime. She told me Trent and she had separated 2 months after I left. I didn't ask why. She didn't offer. She asked if I would come to the baby's birthday party. Her daughter was turning 4. It was going to be small. Just family, she said, and then she stopped, like she heard herself. I said, I'll think about it. I went. It was a small backyard party on a Saturday in July. Streamers, a grocery store cake, 3 other kids from the neighborhood. Kayla's mother, Beverly, was not there. I did not ask about that. The little girl, when she saw me, ran across the grass and grabbed my hand and said, You came. Like she had been waiting. Like it was a given. And the only question had been, when? I held onto that small hand, and I thought about 10 years and $63,000, and all the Sunday mornings, and the head gaskets, and the late nights, and the casserole dish, and the yellow blouse, and everything that had come after, and I thought, this one moment right here is the one that doesn't cost anything. She pulled me toward the cake. I went. I don't know that I ever needed the title. I don't know that I needed anyone to call me anything in particular. What I needed was to know that the life I had built with my own hands, the one I kept showing up to even when I was being asked, quietly and then not so quietly, to leave had mattered to someone. It mattered to a 4-year-old girl in a backyard full of streamers. That's enough. For now, that's enough.